Now, in the long run, we know that the firm can change the scale of operation. So, when the scale of operation changes, all factors of production become variable and nothing is considered as fixed. Dear students, today's presentation is on economies and diseconomies of scale. I hope you have been finding the earlier lessons useful and the notes particularly useful for your examination purposes. So let's go straight into the subject. I like to start a lesson with a, a quote from a pioneer in the field of study. So Jacob Weiner, 1953, makes a mention about the technological advantage or the pecuniary advantage that a firm gets when it changes its scale of operation. Now, this increases uh, the benefits to the company, and these are known as internal economies. So the firm has expanded, so the benefit goes to the firm. And this is an outcome of the management of that particular firm. So we get pecuniary economies and we get real economies of scale. So let's understand these two terms. Also, when a firm expands its production, it can produce its goods at lower cost and therefore it can offer its goods at lower prices. This has got an advantage to the economy as well because the market demand will increase for that product and consumers will be able to purchase it at a lower price. It also benefits in terms of competitive advantage because firms only that become big in their scale of operation can actually survive and become bigger, whereas small scale firms really cannot expand much until they change the scale of operation. So there are types here. Advantages experienced by a firm when it increases its scale of production and output, the level of output will automatically change. So there are two types, the real economies and pecuniary economies. There's also another type of economy called as external economies and external diseconomies. Let's look at the pecuniary economies of scale. Pecuniary economies of scale is enjoyed by a firm when it changes its scale of operation. In this pecuniary economies, the firm benefits by getting lower prices or getting discounts in the purchases of factors of production. Now, this is they don't they get lower prices. They can get things at a lower prices or at discounts. So these lower prices can be for the raw material that are used in the production processes from the suppliers. It could be in terms of finances from the banks when banks may give it at a lower rate of interest or on softer terms because they purchase in and they take loans in large quantities, or it could be the lower cost of advertising because when they advertise on a large scale they get an advantage of reduced prices, so they have an advantage there. And they also get advantage in terms of transport cost where it can get it at a lower cost than they would have otherwise paid, or it could be the wages and salaries that they pay in lesser amount to the workers simply because these firms may be able to offer some monopsonic behavior of the firm can be a reason why the wages can be reduced by some firms, not all, some firms can do that. There are also the second type of major internal economies called as real-time economies, and these real economies are of four types. These are associated with the reduction in the physical quantity. The other one was in terms of price. This one in real economy is not in terms of price, it is in terms of physical quantity itself. So there is a reduction in the physical quantity of inputs, raw material, or various types of capital and labor. Let us see how this functions. There are, of these four economies, the real economies, there are four types. So the first one is production economies of scale. In the case of production economies of scale, the first one we are talking about is labor economies. So what happens to labor when the scale of operation changes? The first thing that happens to labor is specialization of labor. Labor can now be specialized in carrying out a particular kind of job, and because they are trained to carry out a particular kind of job, they become skilled in that, and when they become skilled in that, their efficiency and productivity also increases. It also, when the firm is in large operation, it also prevents the workers from doing different kinds of job which happens in small scale firms. So here there are people dedicated to certain kinds of job, and there is no time loss that can happen because workers have to move from one place to the other. The third thing that happens is when specialization occurs to the firm also sets in automation. And this automation means there are machines that can do particular kind of job and particular labor which is engaging that machine. So here again we are talking about the inventions of tools and machines which are necessary for that particular factory, which is again time saving and better utilization of labor and minimal wastage of resources. So there is also something called as cumulative effect. Cumulative effect happens when the entire firm has got specialized, it has got trained, and it has become efficient. So the overall quality of labor of that organization will improve. So this cumulative effect is the technical efficiency of all the persons will improve, and this thus the firm experiences higher productivity. The second one is called as technical efficiency. Technical efficiencies are related with the fixed capital of the firm. Now, when we talk about fixed capital, we mean specialization and fixed capital equipment. When it is a large firm, it is possible for the firm to buy machines to do particular kind of jobs, and that the machines will become specific to that particular usage alone. Now, let's take the example of a factory which processes nuts, for example. Now if it is processing nuts, then it can have different machines for processing different kinds of nuts. Or it is spices, there can be different machines for grinding specific kinds of spices. That can happen only because the firm is producing in such large quantities. Also, there is the indivisibility of factor capital, which means these machines can be installed only if a large quantity is produced. So, say a machine has a capacity to turn out 1 ton of the finished product, then it cannot produce 500 kgs or 200 kgs of it. So, this large quantity that the firm expects to produce is possible only when the scale of operation is large in so many other areas also. Then the indivisibility that we are having, this machine which cannot be divided to produce smaller quantity can be fully utilized, and when it is fully utilized, we say that the machine is working efficiently. There is also something called as setting up cost. Setting up cost is when a machine, the same nut making machine if we take, these machines will have to be set up for each kind of nuts, for groundnut ones, for almond nuts, for cashew separately. So each time there is a time that is taken for resetting the machine. Whereas when the scale of operation is large, so there is no preparation that is needed, and at one go the machine can be set for a particular job or a product, and thus reduces the time and resources for that. For example, metal strapping, we have given the metal strapping example. In the case of metal strapping in a car manufacturing factory, there should be this metal strapping which does makes doors or the roof of the car or the back of the car. So each time you can imagine that the setting of this machine has to be changed to produce different pieces of the car. But car making factory is a large scale factory, and because it is a large scale factory, there can be specialized machine only to make doors, or only to make the roof, or only to make the back or front or whichever. So in that case, we are talking about the machines which have been set up for one particular purpose, and that now many number of units are produced. So in which case there is no wastage of setting up that machine for a particular purpose. There are also the initial cost of setting up of a manufacturing process, in which case when a new product has to be created, packaging has to be changed, or the composition of the product has to be changed, the shape of the product has to be changed. All of these involve expenditure. But a small firm is not in a position to change these products because it doesn't have that much of capabilities to change. Whereas for a large firm, it is possible to change the initial cost change of, because the large number of output from the same machine is produced, they can change over to another machines because they might have covered up the entire cost of that machine during the production process. So the cost of market exploration, the cost of research for a new product, the cost of development of a new product, all of that are possible for large firms, whereas for small firms it is not possible to take this kind of a risk of spending money on product development. The other one is the designs of the product, the way the product looks, the wrappers or whatever. In all of these cases, because a large quantity has to be produced, the cost per unit will reduce. We also find that the advantages in terms of reserve capacity requirement. So large firms have the advantage to prevent disruption in production. If there is some problem because of which there is a reduction or a stoppage of production, then these firms can have the capacity to have a reserve or capacity which will take care of these kind of sudden stoppages of work. It can prevent the breakdown of the system from production because they already have an excess capacity that is available to such firms. There is also the third kind of economies. They are called the marketing or selling economies, and these are related to the distribution of product. Now, when we mean distribution of product, we are talking about advertising and dealership, etc. So, when a firm is producing goods in such large quantities, it is possible for a firm to have an entire activity of distribution, exclusive dealership, samples. All of these are possible for the firm because the firm is selling such large quantities. So the selling cost of all of these products, in many salespeople, then sales demonstration, all of these are possible for a large scale firm, whereas for a small firm it is not possible to carry on such kind of activities. The fourth one is called as managerial economies. Now, managerial economies happens to a firm because the firm, when it becomes large scale, it is able to have specialized management decision making unit. For example, it can have a finance department, it can have a planning department, it can have then it can have an HR department, it can have a marketing department, a transport department, computer related department. All of these are possible. All these kind of managers are possible only when the firm is in producing in such large quantities. So these large quantities have to be managed on their different dimensions, and at that point it is possible to employ managers who will take care of different activities of the kind. So techniques, they will also learn techniques and tools of modern management because the firm is big. It can employ all those knowledge component into the production processes. It can have a decentralized decision making. That means each of these departments that we just spoke about can take decisions of their own, and they can work on to improve their efficiency of their respective department. So overall what happens is the management decisions are better. It is also understood that they can actually take care of their one particular process of production and do it well, which doesn't happen in a small scale where one person has to manage all of these kinds of activities. Transport and storage cost also is an advantage for such large firms. When the scale of operation changes, these firms, what they can do is they can rent out large buildings for storing their produce. They can have their own go downs if they want. They can have a large inventory of raw materials stored in this go down. It can also be something that they can have a transport, larger transport facility. They can have their own transport, or because they can have a network of transport. All these are possible only when large quantity of output is produced, or when the scale of production is responsible for increasing large quantity of output. Now, the question is, will the economy be able to continue to take the advantages of changing the scale of production and getting the benefit out of it, both in terms of pecuniary benefits and real benefits? Will the firm continue to be get the advantage of low prices, or more management, or specialized labor, or we are talking about more better transport cost, or machines technically efficient? Will it be possible for this firm, even though it has expanded, to continuously get this, or will it happen that after some time the firm will have to go slow on its expansion, because there will be certain kinds of diseconomies that will set in? Now, what do we mean by diseconomies? Diseconomies are disadvantages that are happening because the scale has become too big. Now, when anything becomes too big and too large for managing, then certain kinds of difficulties set in its production processes. It can, beyond a certain level, workers can have problems with decision making, with managers. There could be conflict in organization, that could be miscommunication that can happen. Then there could be problem of complexities that can arise because of the machines. Some machines may not be it may not be possible to align all the machines correctly as they expand so much. There can be problems in lack of coordinating between the different departments. There could be problems in decision making. It could have problems in technically also, things can go wrong. There can be more breakdowns if they are working for a longer time. For some time, all these advantages will happen to the firm when it expands production. But after that, when it expands production, they start getting disadvantages, or what we call as diseconomies of scale. This happens only to the firm. Now, remember that the internal economies and diseconomies happen only to a single firm. When the firm is expanding its internal activities, then they have some advantages and they have some disadvantages. Now, the same way, there are something called as external economies and external diseconomies. Here it means that when a firm expands internally, but there are many firms in the same locality, for example, then the so many firms in that economy has in that locality has got certain advantages for that area. At one time, we have the special economic zone. So there are many firms which are located in that area. So all the firms, because they have grown big, they have a certain advantage. So that when the industry grows, there is a certain advantage. It could be by the firm of the same industry, or it could be firms in the inner locality. Geographically also, there could be a problem. Now, when these economies happen, they could get there might be courier services in that area, there might be banking sector in that area, there might be insurance companies in those areas, there might be transport companies operating in that area. There are a lot of things that can happen in that particular area. Good roads may be there, good infrastructure may be there, housing may be there. All these can happen in that locality because there are a large number of firms operating in that area. But then the question is, how long will those areas also benefit? Have we not heard of areas becoming congested, water problems, garbage problems, or there are problems relating to housing? All of this will begin to also appear. So the benefits that accrue to the set of firms located in a place, or set of firms in that industry, these are called as external economies of scale. Now, this is not happening because of one firm. It is because there are multiple firms and all the firms are expanding in the same region, or they're all expanding. All the firms in that industry are expanding. Either way, there will be an advantage to that particular industry or to that particular locality. So benefits are external. Every firm will enjoy that benefit, and this the firm has no control over the way these any economies happen. It just happens because all of them are located in the same place, or all the firms of the same industry are growing. The individual firm is not responsible for external economies of scale. Now, Marshall explained this. These economies are external to the firm and they are called external economies. So these could be due to industry location. Or Jacob Weiner gave that those which accrue to a particular concern as a result of expansion or out by the industry as a whole. So it could be because of two reasons. Either it is because of the firms in the industry grow, the large number of firms have come up, like a garment factory in the same locality. There could be garment factories that have grown up, or simply because the garment industry itself has become very large number of garment factories have grown up. Then suddenly they'll find shortage of labor, and there could be problems associated otherwise. So there is a close relationship between the industry of the firm and that of the output of the firm and that of the industry. So firms of cost of a firm depend upon not only its own cost but also on the output of the industry. So when the industry does well, the firms also enjoy the benefit. When too many firms are there, then the demand for this raw material, all of this could happen in a large quantity, because there are so many firms in the same locality which wants it. So there could be a large supply of these raw material in that particular place. Then it could be that, as I mentioned, it could be the development of transport, it could be the development of communication, research, knowledge, ancillary units, all of them can happen, and then all the firms in that particular locality can get the benefit, or all the firms in the industry can benefit if the industry grows in expanding in various activities. So these diseconomies also can happen, like raw material shortage or labor shortage, or too much of congestion, or there could be adequate housing problem or transport problem. So these are called as negative externalities. So the firm is not responsible for that, but when all the firms are located in one area, this kind of a difficulty can arise. So this economies actually bear more cost on the firms. Now let me just summarize for you what we have done. The first thing is that returns to scale means all the factors of production have become variable in the long run. Then there are advantages of that. There are two kinds of advantages: the internal economies, real economies, and pecuniary economies. Pecuniary economies are those which is because things can be purchased at a lower price. Then real economies can be in production, technical economies, it could be in marketing economies, or it could be in resource economies. So but all these are advantages to the firm because it has expanded its scale of operation. There can also be diseconomies, which can happen because the firm is expanded beyond what it can manage, and therefore the managerial economies that it was having, or the technical economies what it was having, or the marketing economies what it was enjoying earlier, they can all become negative, or they can become negative economies or diseconomies. And when the economy becomes negative, what happens is the cost of production will increase. So the other one is the external and internal diseconomies. Firm is not responsible, it is the industry that is responsible, or location of firm in a particular location is responsible for that. So there also the same, when it is a large number have set in, all of them get the benefit. When too many of them set in, then all of them get the a disadvantage, and that is what is called as diseconomies of scale. So the next topic that we will do is the cost of production. So we need to understand the cost, and when we do the cost, we will relate the cost of production to the economies and diseconomies of scale. Thank you. I hope you can share.